This week, I'll conclude, inshallah, the points that I have not yet concluded. And I'll summarize a few things for those who would like to, who did not attend the whole piece, and also those who would like to make some comments or share or ask questions. I'll allow for that, inshallah. I will put up a QR code if you have questions about the topic of mortality and accountability. You're welcome to put it there, and then I'll sort through those questions and I'll answer some of them, inshallah, next session. Again, general questions, I'm sorry, I'll probably ignore, but questions that are related to the topic, I will, inshallah, take some time and talk about. You want it now? Yeah, just put it up just for next week so that people can use it and put the questions, and next week, inshallah, we'll answer them. Okay. So, to start off, in order for this to work, in order for mortality and accountability to actually work for you, you have to spend a little bit of time contemplating both, simulating both for yourself. This is an important exercise that you should perform in your life, and you should perform it often, once a month at least, if not once a week, where you contemplate your own passing. You contemplate one of the moments, moments of Yawm al-Qiyamah, and you put yourself in that position. This requires, obviously, in order for it to work, the ability to contemplate and reflect, to actually perform tafakkur appropriately, which I find to be the actual problem. The problem is not the simulation of death or the examples that exist about Yawm al-Qiyamah, because those are they're pretty clear. They're all throughout the Quran. They're everywhere in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The issue is the capacity to actually contemplate and reflect appropriately, which is not what I'm going to talk about in depth today, because I've talked about that before, and I'll bring it up probably again once we move on to a different topic. But you have to start building the capacity to contemplate, to perform tafakkur, which is, in a nutshell, your ability to sit and focus mentally on one topic, to focus on one thing, and to keep your focus on that one thing for a certain period of time, right? In a position where you are not distracted by anything else, and you're able to start pulling out the threads of this topic and clarifying it for yourself. In the example of contemplating death or mortality, or contemplating Yawm al-Qiyamah, what you're just trying to do is you're trying to put yourself within the position of a story that you're listening to. When you're listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, describe فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ إِنِّي ظَنَنْتُ أَنِّي مُلَاقٍ حِسَابِيَهْ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ فِي جَنَّةٍ عَالِيَةٍ. So we're citing the verses of Surah Al-Halaqah, for example. The ability to contemplate is the ability for you to listen to these verses in your mind and put yourself in that position, and live the moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shared with you. This is what the Sahaba would do with the Quran. This is why the Quran was so effective with them, is because they had built the capacity to actually contemplate what it was that was being recited upon them. Like they were living the moment. It wasn't just something that they listened to and was a distance from them, or they imagine it happening to other people. No, they were the people in that. They were the وَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِشِمَالِهِ فَيَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أُوتَ كِتَابِيَهْ وَلَمْ أَدْرِ مَا حِسَابِيَهْ. They put themselves in the position of that person saying those words. And when they put themselves in those positions, it becomes much more impactful upon them, because they're living it. That comes from the ability to contemplate. Historically, the human race were very good at this. We used to call it daydreaming. But all it really was is you just didn't have anything else to do. So you just stare out at the sky and you just think. And you think deeply for a long period of time. We have since been deprived of this skill almost completely. We have depleted the skill in totality, and we replaced it with death scrolling. Now you're just on your phone and you're just watching and listening and you're just taking in all this stimuli that you don't have the ability to process, by the way, emotionally or intellectually. It's too much to actually process for the human mind and heart. But when you're younger, if you grew up, like for me, you grew up, you just stood there, you just sat there for a while on the bus. I remember just sitting there, nothing to do. There's nothing to do at all. I don't like the person on this side, I don't know the person on this side, and it's an hour, and I don't have anything with me. I forgot my mushaf at home. There's nothing to read. I'm tired of reading. My eyes hurt. So I just sit there. Right? You can't sleep. Sometimes people can sleep. Sometimes you can't sleep. So you just think. right? And you don't even know that you're thinking, but you are. And you're processing all of these emotions and all these thoughts, and you're going to depth. A lot of people sometimes, those who don't know how to do this well, end up going in circles, and it becomes very difficult for them. But if you learn how to contemplate, then you end up learning how to put yourself in different scenarios, how to run scenarios, how to look at outcomes, and how to judge them. When you think about mortality and you think about accountability, you have to take time and do this. Every Ramadan on the 27th night, I usually try an exercise for people. Just an exercise. I go through, I recite out the different stations of Yawm al-Qiyamah, asking people just to close your eyes and think. Just imagine yourself. Imagine this is you, because it is going to be you. It's really not an imagination. It's just a prep session. Like we do mock interviews for medical students, right? They're not imagining themselves. This is what's going to happen. In a few months, they're going to be sitting there answering these questions. That's what's going to happen. So when you contemplate akhirah, it's not an imagination session, because imagination means that it's a sci-fi or it's a fairy tale. No, this is where you're going to be. You're going to be in this situation. It's going to be you, exactly how it's described in the Quran. So you're preparing yourself. But you're like, well, I don't want to be amongst those. Utiya kitabahu bishimali. He was getting his book in the left. Well, then contemplate it so that you can make sure that you're not. But you have to put yourself in that position. You have to feel the remorse and the regret and the fear that comes with the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to that person, so that you guarantee for yourself that you won't be there. That's the only way to do it. There's no other way. So I ask you to take time and contemplate. One of the great Imams, Rabi' ibn al-Haytham, one of the Tabi'een, he used to perform this exercise where he would take his bed that he lay on, and he would bring it very close to the wall in his room. And of course, he would turn off all, there would be no lights. And back then, there were, so it was a lantern, so it wasn't that bright to begin with. And he would lie on the ground between his bed and the wall, and he would cover it. And he would imagine himself to be in his grave. And he would go through this he had this long thing, you'll find, you can actually find the wordings of it, where he would speak to, and he would walk himself through the last moments of death. He would walk himself through his own death, and then he'd put himself in his grave, preparing to be questioned. And then at the moment where his emotions would peak or spike to a moment where it was too much, he would remove and say, Ya Rabi'a, you're alive. You're not dead, and you have a chance, and you have the opportunity to make a difference, so go ahead and make a difference. So he would do this to himself. And he's not alone. Many of our scholars would engage in exercises to try and bring their mortality and the hisab yawm al-qiyamah to their own reality, to make it more realistic and pragmatic for themselves. Some people don't need to go to those lengths, but you should at least try. The reason the Sahaba would stand in salah, listen to the Quran recited, and you would find them emotionally to be shook quickly, meaning they would engage emotionally very quickly and be totally focused and enjoy what they were listening to. The reason that was is because they were living what was being said. It wasn't just words that the Imam was saying. No, they lived it. They put themselves in that position every time, every example that was given, every dialogue. They were living it. That's why the Sahaba, some of them would, subhanAllah, Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab talks about listening to a certain ayah in the Quran, and then وَالطُّورِ وَكِتَابٍ مَسْطُورٍ في رق منشور والبيت المعمور والسقف المرفوع والبحر المسجور إن عذاب ربك لواقع ما له من دافع. And Umar ibn Khattab fell to his knees, and he went home, and people thought he was sick, and they visited him for a week thinking that he was ill. يقول وما بي من مرض إلا خوف هذه الآية ولكن حياء ما أخبرت. But he was so embarrassed to tell people that it was just the wordings of the verse that hit him. He was embarrassed to tell people, I'm not sick, I just got scared. He acted like he was sick, and he accepted people coming and visiting him for a week, not saying that this is what happened to him. This occurs when you allow these verses to, you actually live them. This happens through that ability to contemplate, which is why I'm bringing this up a little bit now. You have to take some time and invest in this. Children are very good at this. That's why we are very careful what stories to tell children, what stories not to tell children. Because if you tell a child a very difficult story, a heavy story, it can affect them emotionally. They can get very invested. I remember as a kid, and I was young, I don't know, when I lived in Saudi, so there was TV in Saudi in the 90s was, it was as good as nothing. Like not having it was the same as having it. And my Canadian grandmother wanted to culture us, so she would send boxes of VCR tapes, like movies, for us to watch. Right? Most of them were like Disney, Robin Hood and Dumbo and stuff like that. We would watch them. And when she sent one year, she sent Braveheart. And I watched that movie as a kid. And I have watched that movie once, and I will never watch it again. I watched it, I was maybe 10 years old, that's it. Never again. I can never watch that movie again. Never. I was too young, and when he was lying there screaming freedom, khalas, I almost fainted. It was way too much for me to, as a kid, it's too much to process. Like, you live the moment with the children are very good at that. That's why we have to be very careful sometimes I'm telling the Sira stories, and I see two young kids, I hold back 3 or 4. I'm like, I'm not going to say this. It's too hard for them. We lose that ability with time. Like, we lose that connection to that neuron mirroring that we have, where we are capable of putting ourselves in positions of others, taking ourselves and putting us in this position and feeling the feelings and living the experience. That's very important, that you don't lose. Like, it gets rusty, it doesn't go away, it just gets rusty. You have to learn to keep it alive. You keep it alive, and you will benefit from the ability to listen to a story, listen to a description, and live it, and have it affect you positively. Like, have it bring forward for you what you need it to bring forward to you in your life. And when we talk about mortality, and we talk about accountability, the reason the Quran is flooded with these verses that talk about these two topics is because the Quran wants you to continuously and constantly engage in thought and contemplation of these verses, so that your heart stays alive, so that you keep that piece going, so you're living the emotion. So if you get rusty, or if you get a little bit tired, or you feel yourself distanced, or your heart starts to die off, meaning that you don't feel much anymore, and you're not motivated, these verses keep it alive. It just keeps on. That's why you don't have one surah that talks about all of death and Yawm al-Qiyamah in one place. Yawm al-Qiyamah is scattered through the Quran, all through the Quran. It's like one big sprinkle, just scattered it all through the Quran, from the beginning to the end. Every surah, every second page, there's some reference about the accountability that happens on the Day of Judgment. It's quite interesting. Like, I actually tell people that aside from a few of the really short ones, as in the ones in Surah Amma, every single surah in the Quran talks about Yawm al-Qiyamah, with no exception. Some of the smaller ones, that's all they do. Like Zalzala, Al-Qari'ah, for example, that's all they do. They just talk about Yawm al-Qiyamah, nothing else. Maybe with the exception of a few of the really, really short ones, like Qul Allahu Ahad, for example, in Al-Tanaq al-Kawthar, stuff like that. But every surah in the Quran has at least one, if not 2 or 3 or 4. Most of them are more than 5. 5 little places in the surah where it reminds you of what happens on that day, on what's going to occur. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْجِبَالِ فَقُلْ يَنْسِفُهَا رَبِّي نَسْفًا فَيَذَرُهَا قَاعًا صَفْصَفًا لَا تَرَى فِيهَا عِوَجًا وَلَا أَمْتًا. You read these verses, and if you understand what it means, and you're connected to it, then khalas, this will bring you back. Any degree of... But that requires a few things. Which is what I'm going to, the bulk of today's talk is going to focus on. I'm going to try and keep it, focused. I'm going to try and stay on topic, inshallah ta'ala, as I promised myself. So here's what we're going to ask. In order for this to work for you, you have to take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words seriously. Like, you have to take His warning seriously. If you don't, then none of this is going to work. If you don't take what He's saying seriously, like you think, not going to happen to me, that means you didn't take it seriously. He sent these words to you, and you decided to exempt yourself from what they're saying. So either you exempted yourself, and you have to have evidence that you can exempt yourself, that this is not going to happen to you. So you have to have some evidence. Either you're receiving your own revelation, and you know that you're not going to happen to you, or you're not taking what He is saying subhanahu wa ta'ala seriously. If you take it seriously, then you'll find it easier for you. That's number one. Number two, you have to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be worthy of holding you accountable. And He is Jalla Jalaluhu wa subhanahu wa ta'ala taqaddasa fi ula. But you, in your mind, in your heart, you have to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as worthy of doing that. Why am I saying this? Because the nafs doesn't accept anyone to judge it. The nafs doesn't accept judgment. That's why when someone judges you, you hate them immediately, even if they're right. Especially when they're right. Like, especially when they hit it on the bullseye, when they say something about you that's exactly you, you hate them and you fight it with why? Because you don't like people judging you. You hate people lying about you. Actually, lying about you doesn't bother you as much. If they said something about you that's not true, like, that's not me. But when they hit you, that's when you fight back the most, because you hate to be judged. We all do. It's a part of how the nafs is structured. We don't like it. So we don't like to be judged. So you actually have to spend some time asking yourself, do you feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to judge you? You may say yes, but I'm asking you on a more deeper level, have you accepted that piece? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you, and He has every right to judge you, and you deserve to be judged. And if you don't feel that, then you have to fix that problem. Because this is a very, very common problem that human beings have that we don't really talk about. That we don't feel, what are you judging me about? And I lived all my life, ayif hali. My whole life has just been one roller coaster downhill the whole time. Every musibah has happened to me, every difficult thing. What are you going to judge me for? There's nothing to judge me. This is a problem. This is a problem. If it exists in the heart or the mind of someone, we're in trouble. If you somehow feel that there's nothing to judge me for, I have nothing. No. I can't fix that for you. You have to fix that. That's going to come from you understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding the relationship you have with Him as a creation, as a creator, looking at your life appropriately, having some self-honesty. There's a bunch of things that have to work in order for that to occur. I can't summarize it all for you in this session. But I'm telling you that akhirah and accountability in the hereafter does not function for you if you are not convinced deep down inside that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has every right to judge you and that He is worthy of judging you and you deserve it. So you have to accept that. So these are the two things that you definitely have to accept. The third one, I put it in question so I don't forget. The third one is, do you feel that it's too complex for you to come back the way you are? Some people, when we talk about, like I said, the Arab had no problem with believing in God and believing in His omnipotency and His omniscience, and all that is fine by them. But to come back again, that's not going to happen. إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما إنا لفي خلق جديد. We're going to come back if you turn into nothing, into the ground. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's too complicated. Do you feel it's too complex that you come back the way you are right now? Do you feel it's beyond, for you to exist again, as you are existing right now, after you die and after your body turns into nothing and after your soul goes wherever it goes, do you feel that it's too complicated for you to come back the same way? And that this is a stretch of the imagination. You have to be of certainty in this issue. You have to have certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began creation and He will repeat all of creation again as it happened the first time. كما بدأكم أول مرة ولقد جئتمونا فرادا كما خلقناكم أول مرة. And you will come to us one by one, individually, as we created you the first time around in the same way. So this has to be clear. I'm just giving you the elements of where akhirah, the reason, because akhirah is very powerful. Like Yawm al-Qiyamah, that piece of the equation is very powerful. It sets everything straight. There's no morality in this world if there's no self-accountability coming from the fact that you're afraid of accountability Yawm al-Qiyamah. Not from the law and people around you, but from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sees all. Without that piece, morality is a joke. It doesn't work, it never has, it never will. You have to have some degree of inner accountability that is based on the fact that you're scared that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to hold you accountable for what you said. Otherwise, as long as it's legal, we're going to do it. And as long as we think we can get away with it, we're going to do it. And most of the time, that's how human beings function. And we find ways to justify all of that in life. If you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to hold you accountable for what you did, then you behave differently. But in order for that to work, and it's the perfect way to fix human behavior. The Prophet ﷺ got all the Sahaba on the same level. It's impossible. It's impossible there's no way to explain how Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Zubayr and Talha and all these people, and Bilal and Ammar and Fatima and Bint al-Khattab and Nusayba and all these people put together, that they all ended up carrying the same set of values, same principles, behaving the same way, acting in the same manner. There's no way of this happening. These people come back from very different backgrounds, very different cultures, very different opinions in life, different walks of life. It's because he brought the Islamic values put in front and said, if you don't stick to these, what's going to happen is, and then those verses of the Quran just flooded. The verses of the Quran just came in and started talking to them about what's going to happen on the Day of Judgment, describing every single detail of it. ونفخ في الصور فصعق من في السماوات ومن في الأرض إلا من شاء الله ثم نفخ فيه أخرى فإذا هم قيام ينظرون وأشرقت الأرض بنور ربها ووضع الكتاب وجيء بالنبيين. They would listen to these verses and collapse, because as they listen to it, they're living it, and okay, خلاص. Of course, they don't need cameras, and they don't need policemen, and they don't need anything. They're going to live their lives in a way that none of us even imagine possible. Wallahi. And when you watch them, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq once, he is standing and someone offers him something to eat. So he eats it, and as he's eating it, the guy tells him, هَذَا مَالُهُ مِنَ الرِّبَى. This man, within his wealth, he used to work with riba. So he gave him back, and he put his hand in his mouth, and he started to vomit. يَقُولُ لَا يَدْخُلُ جَوْفَ أَبِي بَكْرٍ الرِّبَى. the stomach of Abu Bakr will not have riba in it. No, you could easily say, wallahi, he didn't know, and that it would be fine. Like he didn't have to do this at all, like Islamically. But this is a level of wara' that this man carried because of what he was looking towards. He was looking towards Yawm al-Qiyamah, and he didn't want to take any chances with any of that. So you have to answer these questions. You have to ask yourself some of what we just talked about here today. Do you take it seriously? Do you believe that this is going to occur to you? Do you think it's too complicated, that it won't happen? And do you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to hold you accountable? You seem worthy of that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu. The answer for all that is yes, but you have to dig deep and see, is it actually yes for you, or is it something different? You right now in your life dictate what the moments of Yawm al-Qiyamah are going to look like. All of the examples in the Quran, when you look at how the Quran talks about Yawm al-Qiyamah, it always talks about two. يَوْمَ تَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ وَتَسْوَدُّ وُجُوهٌ. Right? It always talks about two parallels, two opposites on the Day of Judgment. You dictate with what you're doing now in your life on which side of that you're going to be. It is not predestined for you. You're not going to be forced into one of those groups. You choose with your life today whether you're going to be فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ or أَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِشِمَالِهِ أَوْ وَرَاءَ ظَهْرِهِ, which is the whole point of those verses being so widespread in the Quran, is because you are in the position right now, what your life is right now, is just dictating, telling the story that will lead to one of these two outcomes. So you have to choose which outcome is going to be. And if you think that way, what ends up happening regarding mortality and akhirah is instead of running away from it all the time, like trying to not think about it, trying to ignore it, trying to push it to the side of your mind as much as possible, you fully embrace it. It is right there in front of you at all times. Everything you're doing is designed to make sure that you have a proper khatimah, that you are ready when death comes, you're standing up with your head held high and you're facing qibla and you're doing all the right stuff, and that you are making the choices that will make sure that Yawm al-Qiyamah you get all that which you hope to get. So instead of running away from the concept, you actually fully embrace what it carries within it. And when you do that, you live better. You stop running away from the idea, you stop fearing it, you stop trying to avoid it, you embrace it and accept it. And it starts to actually affect how you live your lilife. Which is why, and I'll end, this is the piece I want you to go home with today. The piece that I think is most important. There's a bunch of them, but I think this is, you have to have ambition in Jannah. There has to be ambition here. If you don't have ambition, like if you're looking at akhirah, and you're just like, I just want, I'm just trying to make sure if your ambition is low, that means that you're not really taking what he's saying seriously. That's what it actually translates to. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is opening for you all of these doors of high achievement, if he is making available to you Firdaus al-A'la, for example, if Firdaus al-A'la is being made available to you, it's not something closed for certain people, you can get there. And he's saying that it's something that is prepared, you are welcome to get in. He's making it all available to you. And you don't have that ambition. It's a certain degree of lack of etiquette that makes me afraid that you don't understand what it is. If someone's offering you something that is extremely valuable and telling you with a little bit of effort you can get it, and you're saying, I'm good. I'm good, I don't want it. I'm good, I don't need that. There's a problem with that attitude. There's a problem. There has to be high ambition in Jannah. That's why the Prophet ﷺ would say, إِذَا سَأَلْتُمُ اللَّهَ الْجَنَّةَ فَسَلُوهُ الْفِرْدَوْسَ الْأَعْلَى. If you ask Allah for Jannah, make sure you ask for the highest peaks. Don't ask, just get me in. Don't be like, oh, I just want to get in. No. Well, I'll explain to you what attitude you need to have regarding that piece in a moment. But you have to have high ambition in Jannah. It's the only way to show that you appreciate what He is offering you and that you take what He is saying seriously, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only way to show that you take it seriously and that you are appreciative of this equation that He has rigged in your favor is to have high ambition, is to say, yes, you have granted me the ability to go to Jannah. I am going to aim for the highest. So you start living a life that reflects that. You start living a life where you're trying to capitalize on every opportunity of good deeds, staying away from everything that is bad, trying to be at your best at all times so that you can qualify to be from Ahlul Jannah. This is the whole point of it. If you do that, then what possibility is there of you not making it to Jannah? You're taught that if you aim for the stars, then you'll reach the top of the mountains. I don't know, or some silly thing like that. You're told that this is how you do it. You aim really high, then you hit a little bit under, and you're still high, like you're still doing well. If you aim low, then you're always going to come a little bit under where you hit, and you're going to end up really low. That's not a good idea. That's what we're taught as kids, just always aim real high so that you kind of get somewhere close. So if you're aiming high for Firdaus al-A'la, then technically you shouldn't be worried about Jahannam, because Jahannam is so far away. But the reality is that there's still a possibility of iqab. There's still a possibility. There's always a possibility of punishment. That's the truth. But where does that possibility come from? Here's the point that you have to. Where does that possibility come from? If you take what he says subhanahu wa ta'ala seriously, and you aim for the highest levels of Jannah, and you live a life to reflect that. So anytime there is khair, you are on the frontier of all that. You're on the frontier of any good deed. You are for the Quran and the Sunnah, and you're praying at night, and you're performing every good deed. What is the only possibility that will take you somewhere else? It's if the quality of the deeds are lacking. It's if the tazkiyah that exists inside them doesn't work out. It's if the a'mal get rejected. It's if the deeds get rejected. And what causes the deeds to get rejected? One of two things. Either the fiqh is off, like you prayed 1 billion prayers with no wudu. The fiqh was off. You didn't make wudu for any of them. Khalas. That's rare. Most people who are going to aim that high are going to take the 6-7 hours required to learn how to perform the acts mechanically properly. Fiqh is not that complicated. You take one course for the semester, you learn a basic method in fiqh, you know how to make wudu appropriately, you know how to do the mechanics so that your fiqh is fine. The second possibility, the second thing that can ruin it is if the quality of them are off. Meaning the intention is wrong. Who you're speaking to, how you're doing it. There's riya in it, or there's takabbur, there's vanity or arrogance or envy or ostentation, or there's some disease of the heart that's stuck in these that ruins all of them. And the stories connected to that are many. Like there are many examples of that. And probably the scariest of them all is the hadith that is narrated by Imam Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ says, أَوَّلُ مَنْ تُسَعَّرُ بِهِمُ النَّارُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. The first group of people who the Jahannam will be kindled with. Like the fire will be kindled with them. The fire is just kind of getting started. So it's going to be kindled with these people. And he starts counting, alayhi salatu wasalam. Contrary to what everyone standing listening to him that day, to their beliefs, he starts pointing out. He starts saying, a qari', and a alim, and a kareem, and a shaheed. You start using all these terms that we revere in this life. A qari', someone who knows the Quran, we revere them. A alim, a scholar, someone that knows the deen, we revere them. A kareem, a philanthropist who gives their wealth for the sake of Allah, we revere them. A shaheed, a martyr, someone who dies for the sake of Allah, we revere them. But the story is the same for all four. Every time they're picked out, they're plucked out from the groups of people Yawm al-Qiyamah with no hisab, nothing, just hurled into Jahannam. And as this is happening, they're asked, يعني يا رب يا عبدي فيما يعني قرأت القرآن نعم فيما قرأت, why did you learn the Quran? فيك يا رب, to please you. فيقول كذبت, you're a liar. بل قرأت ليقال قارئ, you learn so that people would call you a reciter. So people would say, شوف فلان, he knows how to read the Quran. وقد قالوا, and they did. خلاص, you got what you wanted. You did this for this, you did this, but you used my name for it. You use the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. So instead of, you wanted praise for something, go get praise for something. Don't use Allah's name to get it. Don't hide behind the curtain of piety, the curtain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, so that people will praise you for what you do. If you want fame and praise, then go do something. Yeah? But if you're going to hide behind the curtain of Quran and shara and deen and ilm and shahada and all these other stuff, this is what the Prophet this is what he says, the first people to be thrown in. What about the zalama? What about they're coming. They'll take what, but these people first. So when you aim high to Jannah, right, which is the only right way to do this, the only right way to live life, if you listen to the Quran, is to aim high. Because he's opening all these doors. He's talking to you about what he has ready for you. If you're like, no, I'm good. I'm happy here, honestly. If you leave me here longer, I don't even need to come there to begin with. If that's your attitude, then you don't respect what he is saying. You're not taking what he's saying seriously. So to fix that, you have to start aiming high. No, I believe what you're saying. I believe that Jahannam is the worst place to be. I believe that Dar al-Rahmah with you is the best place to be. And you have offered me the opportunity. It's only respectful and acceptable for me to aim as high as possible. But I know that and if I do that, the only way that I don't end up where you have promised me, because you have promised me that you'll put me in Jannah. You promised me. Subhanak ya Rabb, you promised us that you'll put us in Jannah. You promised us. It's not that I solicited this in some other way or I'm making it up. You're the one who promised us. You told us you're going to take us to Jannah. 100 times in the Quran, He continues to promise you, you're going to go to Jannah. I'm going to put you there. You just hold on and do this and do that and you'll go to Jannah. So the promise is there. The only way, if you are aiming high and you're working to mess this up is the lack of tazkiyah, which brings us back to this whole topic. It's just the lack of this, or lack of fiqh, and honestly, you can mess up fiqh and still get there. Someone who's ignorant, who doesn't know how to make wudu, Allah will forgive him. But someone who is maliciously ostentatious, meaning he doesn't really care if God sees him or not, he wants people to see him, that doesn't work. There's nothing that fixes that. Nothing that will make that forgivable, nothing. But some guy who doesn't really know they tried to learn fiqh and they just couldn't, they made mistakes in the mechanics. They didn't know what they were saying. Mistakes that were based on lack of knowledge or but when you're envious or when you are maliciously arrogant or vain, that's a different level. That's a whole different thing. And it turns your deeds into empty skeletons. And then they're put in the mizan yawm al-qiyamah and they just float. They don't do anything. And how many times did the Prophet ﷺ give us examples of this? أَعْمَالُهُمْ يَجْعَلُهَا اللَّهُ لَهُمْ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. Their deeds are like mountains, and then they turn to fluff. They're there, but he can't seem to. There's no weight. There's no weight. They don't weigh anything. They just fluff. Don't mean why? They're deeds, but they had no substance to them. So the only thing that will ruin it is the lack of tazkiyah, which forces you to go back and look at all this again. So it's all extremely internally connected. Extremely internally connected. When you treat your mortality, and you treat the accountability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will occur yawm al-qiyamah seriously, and you start focusing on making sure that moment of death, when it comes, you are ready, that you have all the right ideas, you have all the right concepts in your heart, you are prepared for it. And when you make sure that you live your life prepared for what's waiting for you on the other side, prepared for the questions that are coming, prepared to present your life appropriately. You have performed the deeds that will qualify you for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy when you live your life that way. All that, what you end up focused on is, the only way this can go wrong is if I ignore this piece of my life. If I ignore the intentions of my deeds. If I ignore whether they're going to be accepted or not. If I ignore the concept of ihsan in everything that I do. Making sure that I'm doing it to the best of my ability. Making sure that I'm holding myself accountable in how I do it. That's the only way to mess this up. There's no other way. Which is why the Salihin, and when you look at the ulama and the Salihin and the Tabi'een and the Sahaba and the Prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they aimed for the highest place in Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ aimed so high that we make a dua after every adhan just for him. وَبَعَثْهُ الْمَقَامَ الْمَحْمُودِ. He was told that there's a place in Jannah called al-Maqam al-Mahmud, which is only for one person, and he hopes to be that person. His ambition was, I want to be on that highest place. It's not arrogance. It's not arrogance, because we don't deserve any of it to begin with. We don't deserve any of it to begin with. It's just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's karam. But I'm going to try my best to be as good as possible to qualify in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be closest. You're not trying to be better than others. You're trying to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we make dua for him every single salah. وَبَعَثْهُ الْمَقَامَ الْمَحْمُودِ, because he's trying to get there. Yet the same man, alayhi salatu wasalam, was fearful of the hellfire, was fearful of hisab and iqab, was always watching and wondering whether he did something wrong that would displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because he understands this very clearly. All those Sahaba have the exact same mentality. They are aiming, and we all know where they're going to be. Even those who were told by the Prophet ﷺ they're going to be in Jannah, they live their lives that way. Because they know all it takes is just one disease of the heart finding its way in, and then it poisons the ocean of good deeds that you've done. One drop of it will poison the ocean of it. So they are standing there defending to make sure. And this turns into a lifestyle that is very much focused. You can see now that now you have no time. But you end up, there's no time. There's no time for anything really. You're absolutely focused on how you're living your life, to make sure that it ends well, to make sure that the accountability later is going to be in your favor, by doing that, you're not only performing the right deeds, you are constantly making sure and revising the quality of these deeds. You're finding flaws, you're fixing those flaws, you're trying harder next time. You have no time. People like this have no time. They really don't. I swear to you. And that's why you'll run into Salihin, and they're just busy. They don't have time for gossip. They don't have time for anything, because they're completely taken by this, and they're living a life that they're enjoying. They're enjoying their life because they have a goal that they're working towards. We need in our lives goals that are achievable. If I give you an unachievable goal, you're miserable the whole entire time. If you have no goal, you're even more miserable if you're just sitting around with nothing to do. But if I give you an achievable goal, suddenly you have something to do. You have something that makes your life worth living, and you start focusing on that goal. It's achievable. It's very achievable. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. وَإِنَّهُ لَيَسِيرٌ عَلَى مَنْ يَسَّرَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. As the Prophet ﷺ would say. It is easy for those who Allah will make it easy for. It's not difficult to achieve, but it requires the totality of your energy. Like, you have to be focused on what you're doing. You have to take seriously what he explained. As he talks about death, as he talks about mortality, as he talks about accountability, as he explains Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're listening. It is sinking in. You're putting yourself in that position. You're deciding, I want to be there, so you decide you're going to do something different. So you start working towards that, making sure that inshallah your akhirah is going to look good. But then you have to remind yourself that if my deeds don't have good quality, then none of them will count. So you go back and you start questioning them, questioning their quality, questioning their intentions and how they're being done, learning more so that you can increase that quality. Khalas. وَهَذَا حَيَاةُ الصَّالِحِينَ. This is how they live their lives. This is how akhirah and death fixed. This is how mortality beautifies your life, and accountability brings forward your morals and sets your values for you. If you remove these two pieces, it's almost impossible to talk about anything that I've shared with you. It's almost impossible to talk to you about. I'll end with this. This is my last piece. How do you think someone who loves you will hold you accountable? And how do you think you'll be held accountable by someone whom you love? And what form of accountability will occur between two who love one another? So really, when you start thinking about all of this, he's going to ask you subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're going to answer him. But if you figure out somehow how much he loves you, and how much you should love him, and that love grows, it is acknowledged, it is nurtured, it is cared for, and it becomes real, then the accountability that exists Yawm al-Qiyamah is of a very different nature. It's of a very different nature, because you're being held accountable by the one who loves you more than anyone else. And you are being held accountable by the one whom you love the most. Which is why Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, in the famous quote that he made, confusing people, قال لو خيرت يوم القيامة بين أن يحاسبني ربي وأن يحاسبني أبواي لاخترت ربي. If I was given the option Yawm al-Qiyamah to be held accountable by Allah versus held accountable by my parents, I would have chosen God. And it takes a while to think about that. Because you think, no, of course my parents will take it. No, they won't. No, once they figure out what you've done, they won't. There's a lot they don't know. There's a lot they don't know. I can think of it just sitting here. Oh, so much they don't know. Alhamdulillah, they don't know. And Yawm al-Qiyamah, that's all I ask for, is you just continue not to know. Because if they figure out that was you, Allah la ya'tik. That whole thing was you? خلاص. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no, He's arham. That's why the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam looked at a camel, like a she camel, lifting her, her legs to allow her young one to drink the milk. فقال أترون رحمة هذه برضيعها. You see how she takes care of her. لله أرحم بكم من هذه برضيعتها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more mercy for you than this one. And then another hadith will say, لله أرحم بكم من آبائكم وأمهاتكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more rahmah for you than your fathers and your mothers do. He has more empathy for you Yawm al-Qiyamah than anyone else. Knowing all that, understanding all that, if you don't take it seriously, if it doesn't reflect on how you live, if it leads to a degree of a procrastination or laziness or carelessness or neglect, it's a show of lack of etiquette. It's a show of lack of belief that will backfire on you. Meaning, if you decide from listening to what I said this time, at this last piece, that khalas is nothing to worry about, that means you have neglected all of the verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it very clear that punishment is real. So how do you do it? You have to balance it out. You have to aim high for the highest place in Jannah. knowing that there's a possibility of you being one of those people down there. So your whole focus in life is to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how much you desire to be close to Him, how much you love Him, and how serious you take this warning of punishment, so that you guarantee that you don't end up there. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, every time someone came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, come with us, we are going on a trip, let's do this, hang out, chill, which is normal, everyone does this, but ﷺ would rarely have time to do this, and he would say, Ana faratukum ala al-hawd, he would say, I'm waiting for you at the hawd. Just make it to the basin. Just don't fall short. Just make it there. Drink, get in, we have all the time in the world. We can chat and chill and do whatever you want. Right now, I don't have time, and technically neither do you. So just meet me there, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in. Just meet me there. That was his focus. We'll have time. Don't worry, I'm not saying no to you. We'll socialize. Just there. It's too much to do right now. I can't afford it, and technically you can't either. So we'll meet there. We'll meet at the hawd of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And that is the mentality he lived by. He spent time with his friends, and he spent time with his family, and did all that alayhi salatu wasalam. And I'll end with this. Okay, this is my last piece. If you aim high in life, all of the fun that you are fearing you will miss out on will happen automatically. I swear to God, I swear to the Almighty, Wallahi al-Azim, hands down, come back and hold me accountable if it doesn't happen. You aim high, like aim really high in life. Aim high as in Jannat al-Firdaus, and work towards it. All of the fun, like the leisure and the pleasure and the stuff that you're worried is not going to happen, will happen. It will 100%, it just happens on its own. It just exists. If you make those things your goal, then you won't even get them. Like you won't even get those things. Like you'll do them and they won't be fun, and they'll actually bring all this misery and depression and anxiety later on. They won't function. But aim high, and all the stuff that you're worried you're going to miss out on will happen for you. And you won't miss out on anything. I guarantee it. I tell this to the kids all the time. Yabni Mashan Allah, don't focus on just when am I going to have fun? What's my next play date? Please don't do that. Wallahi, this stuff will happen. Wallahi, you'll get all the fun in the world. Just focus on the bigger picture here, and all that will just exist. It's a part of being alive. Having that joy is just a part of being alive, honestly. But this materialistic, I don't know, it's changed people. Wallahi, it's changed people. Living for the weekend type of mentality, and just focusing on when my next trip is and when my next holiday and vacation. And then, so what? Your Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday are nightmares? They're just, you're just holding your breath and just hoping you can get through the 4. That's 5 out of 7, ya Sheikh. That's 5 out of 7. You're going to hold your breath for 5 out of 7? Ya Latif. How is that not 65% of your life you're going to spend miserable, 70% and just try to make do of 2 days out of 7? How much time off do you get? And then the people who have no work, they're miserable too. And people who have all the time off in the world to go travel, they're also miserable. So there's no. Allah tub alayna. طيب. I'm going to end with that. Khalas, I reached my. There's 4 more points, but we'll leave that inshallah. So next week, inshallah ta'ala, there's the Q&A QR code up there. Use it if you have any questions specifically on mortality and accountability. Please put them there, and I'll attempt to answer. I will allow for questions, verbal questions. I'll allow for comments, points to share, feedback, inshallah. So we'll spend next session doing that. We'll take the week after that off, and then we'll be off obviously during Ramadan, and then we'll bring this back inshallah after a few weeks after Ramadan, and I may change the night for it, but we'll see. Like we'll figure out. We'll see how. Usually we revamp our schedule after Ramadan, anyways. Everything kind of moves around after Ramadan, but we will continue this inshallah ta'ala after Ramadan. I hope that was a benefit to you. Subhanakallah bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka wa 'azzama ala nabiyyina wa habibina wa qurrati a'yunina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.